The sun over Coronado didn't shine. It blazed, throwing sharp golden spears across the Navy SEAL training compound. Heat shimmered off the asphalt like rising spirits, and the air carried that familiar cocktail of sweat, gun oil, and adrenaline. It was a Saturday, technically a lighter day on the schedule, but SEALs didn't understand the concept of off. Not really. Dozens of operators gathered near the pull-up tower, a steel monolith scarred by years of hands, chalk, and ego. The chatter was easy, loud, and competitive. Men in sand-colored shirts took turns gripping the high bar, hauling themselves up with explosive force before dropping to the ground, laughing and cursing when they failed to beat the number carved into the wooden board nailed beside the tower. 27. 27 strict dead-hang pull-ups. No kip, no swing. Chin over the bar every time. It was the SEAL compound's unofficial, undefeated record, a beast of a benchmark set by a legend who retired 2 years earlier. Men built like Greek statues had attempted to break it. Marines had tried. Rangers had tried. Athletes from other branches sometimes visited and threw themselves at the bar with burning pride. They all ended up staring at the number afterward. A blond SEAL named Brooks slapped the board. "Still untouched," he said proudly. "That's because only monsters can hit this, like actual monsters, mythical creatures, dragons and S," another SEAL said before cutting off, noticing someone approaching. A figure walked across the compound, not rushing, not strutting, just moving, calm and deliberate. In the blinding sun, her silhouette appeared almost weightless, slim, compact, athletic. When she stepped into the shade of the tower, the details sharpened. Staff Sergeant Riley Hart. Army Ranger. Black ponytail. Uniform sleeves rolled to her elbows. A build not bulky but carved tight, efficient strength, not decorative muscle. She wasn't big. She wasn't loud. She didn't wear bravado in her eyes. She just radiated something quiet and dangerous. The SEALs glanced at her, then at the tower, then at each other. The mood shifted, humor sharpening into curiosity. "What brings the Army to our beach?" Brooks asked, wiping his palms with chalk as he prepared for another failed attempt. "Lost." Riley's eyes flickered to the bar, then back to him. No annoyance, no embarrassment. Just a simple, grounded truthfulness in her expression. "No," she said, "I'm right where I need to be." A couple of SEALs exchanged amused looks. Riley pointed a thumb at the bar. "Mind if I try?" The reaction was instant. A few snorted. One muttered, "Oh boy." Another crossed his arms, grinning. "You sure you want to do that, Sergeant?" "Record's brutal," a tall SEAL added. "Chews people up, spits 'em out, but hey, free entertainment." She didn't react, didn't rise to the bait. Just took a slow breath, stepped closer to the chalk bucket, and dipped her hands inside. Chalk dust billowed into the sun as she rubbed it into her palms, coating her skin with ghostly white. Chief Danvers watched from the opposite side, leaning against a training sled. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He just observed, the way someone might observe the wind when it changed direction too suddenly. He had seen Hart's name on the visitor list that morning, Riley Hart, U.S. Army Rangers. He thought nothing of it until he saw her in person. Something in her posture, her packing, the silent way she studied the bar, it hinted at a deeper story. The others didn't feel it. They only saw someone small, someone quiet, someone they assumed would break at Rep 10, if she even made it to Rep 10. Riley stepped under the bar. Her eyes lifted. Her fingers reached up, brushing the cold metal like it was an old acquaintance. Then she gripped it fully and hung from it, her shoulders loosening, her spine settling. The group laughed again. "Hey, careful up there. Need a boost. Try not to die on the first rep." But the laughter dimmed to silence when she pulled herself up slowly, controlled, dead hang strict. Her chin crossed the bar, held for a beat, then lowered with the steadiness of a metronome. 1 rep. Another. Another. Rep 6. Rep 7. Her form never shook. Her breathing never changed. Her core stayed locked, legs still as if cast in iron. Around her the SEALs were no longer joking. They leaned in, crossed their arms, shifted their weight. Some frowned. Others glanced around, searching faces to confirm they weren't imagining it. She's still going. No, like she's really going. By rep 12, the joking died entirely. Brooks muttered, "What the?" A guy behind him whispered, "Dude, she's clean. Those are all clean." Riley didn't hear any of it. Didn't need to. Her mind was somewhere else. She had slipped into a zone where the world narrowed to rhythm and breath. Her grip adjusted slightly every few reps, subtle microcorrections born of long, punishing training. Rep 15. Rep 16. Rep 17. Danvers stepped closer. He recognized the signs. A normal athlete had limits, visible ones. They strained, they gasped, they compensated. But Riley, her body worked like polished machinery, economical, fluid, whisper quiet. On rep 18, sweat began to bead at her temple, not from fatigue, just from the sun's relentless burn. The SEALs all stared. "Who the hell is she?" someone murmured. Danvers pressed his tongue to the inside of his cheek, thinking. He'd heard something once, a rumor from a ranger buddy, a female sergeant with a reputation that never made it into official reports, something about a solo rescue op in Nangarhar, something about surviving an ambush that should have killed her. But the Army didn't share specifics, especially not about missions that didn't technically exist. Danvers felt a strange chill sweep over him, despite the heat. He watched her hit rep 22 without slowing. Then 23. A murmur rippled across the group like a gust of wind hitting a field of grass. Men who had been cocky seconds ago now looked uneasy. Competitive pride turned into raw disbelief. Even Brooks, who normally narrated everything like a sportscaster, was silent now. Riley exhaled through her nose, steady and rhythmic, and moved into rep 24 with the same composure she had at rep 4. That's when Danvers stepped closer. He wasn't trying to stop her. He was studying her. Because something about this, something about her, felt like more than simple strength. By rep 26, the SEALs' beloved record was trembling. By rep 27, they held their breath. But Riley didn't drop. She didn't pause. She didn't even acknowledge their shock. Instead, she took a subtle breath that Danvers immediately recognized, not a recovery breath. No, a transition breath. She wasn't finishing. She was getting started. Danvers' heart kicked hard. The record was tied. The bar was quiet. The world seemed to hold still. Riley spoke for the first time since gripping the bar, her voice calm, almost amused. "Not here to tie anything." Then she pulled herself up again. Rep 28. Record broken. But the way she moved, smooth, steady, unwavering, told Danvers something that unsettled him. She wasn't even warmed up yet. And that was the moment the chief felt the first flicker of fear. Because whoever Riley Hart really was, she had just changed the atmosphere of the entire SEAL compound. And nobody was laughing anymore. The SEALs' laughter had vanished like fog under the midday sun. A quiet tension took its place, a charged electricity in the air that made the pull-up tower seem taller, more imposing, and somehow alive. By the time Riley Hart hit rep 18, the spectators could barely breathe. Every strict pull-up she executed was perfect, elbows tucked, core tight, legs locked in a rigid line. But it wasn't just physical skill that held their attention. There was something in the rhythm of her movement, a pulse that suggested she had survived far harsher trials than steel bars or sun-blasted asphalt. "Is she okay?" whispered one SEAL, shading his eyes from the sun. He didn't look away. He couldn't. Every inch she ascended felt like witnessing a small miracle. Chief Danvers didn't answer. He didn't need to. He was busy staring at her, analyzing the subtle shift of muscles under skin, the contraction of biceps, the tension in her shoulders. Her hands gripped the bar like someone gripping the lifeline between life and death. Danvers knew the signs, experience that had nothing to do with pull-ups. Somewhere deep in the back of his mind, a whisper of a rumor surfaced. A female ranger in Nangarhar, a solo extraction. 6 insurgents, 90 seconds. Nobody alive thought she survived. Yet she did. Could it be her? Surely not. A myth in khaki uniform couldn't possibly be standing here in the California sun, dismantling their record with a calm expression. But by Rep 22, all doubt was gone. She wasn't just strong, she was relentless. The SEALs, who prided themselves on endurance, precision, and pain tolerance, now watched with something close to fear. Brooks, still holding chalk in trembling hands, muttered under his breath, "That's insane. No one moves like that." "Seriously," another said, voice tight. "I've trained with some of the best. She's not human." Riley's breathing was measured, almost serene. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no strain, no wavering. She seemed bored, almost annoyed by the heat, by the sweat, by the weight of the world, yet she persisted. Every rep was methodical, surgical, unyielding. At Rep 24, Chief Danvers finally stepped forward, his boots crunching lightly on the gravel. "All right," he said, voice calm but edged with something darker. "If you stop now, you tie the record, that's enough." Riley paused mid-rep, shoulders still tense. She glanced at him, a ghost of a smile brushing her lips. "I'm not here to tie anything," she said. The words were casual, deceptively so. But every SEAL standing nearby caught the steel behind them, the subtle intensity that made it clear she wasn't joking. Danvers swallowed hard. The rumor in his mind about Nangarhar was no longer a whisper. It was a suspicion, a dangerous possibility. By Rep 26, her movements were mesmerizing. Not elegant, not flashy, but hypnotic. A rhythm honed over thousands of hours, thousands of impossible circumstances. Men had been taught to admire discipline, but this was something deeper, a hard, raw core of survival. The SEALs edged closer. Their arms, crossed a minute ago with nonchalance, now twitched with nervous energy. Some shifted on the balls of their feet, subconsciously mirroring her tension. Some muttered quiet bets. How high could she go? 29? 30? Impossible. "Do you even train for this?" one whispered. Riley's eyes flicked toward the tower's wooden board. 27, the infamous number. Her lips twitched in a faint smirk, almost imperceptible. Her mind, however, was not on the record. It was elsewhere. She remembered the mountains, the dust, the roar of gunfire in Afghanistan, the impossible climb over jagged ridges, dragging wounded men under fire, the heat, the mud, the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. She had survived worse than a pull-up tower, much worse. And yet the bar called to her now, not as a challenge, not as a test of strength, but as proof. Proof she could still finish something she started. Proof she could still win when nobody believed she could. By Rep 28, the previous record had fallen. 2 SEALs swore under their breath, voices low, incredulous. Danvers didn't move. He only watched, calculating. She wasn't just strong. She wasn't just relentless. She was dangerous. Not in a violent way, not yet, but in the way someone who had stared death in the face could be dangerous to assumptions, to egos, to every man who had thought himself untouchable. Around the compound, a small crowd began to gather, other trainees, instructors, even staff from adjacent buildings. All eyes turned toward the tower, drawn magnetically. Even seasoned SEALs found themselves silent, mesmerized, almost reverent. By Rep 31, Riley's form was flawless. Every pull-up landed like a pendulum, striking the exact mark it was meant to hit. Her breathing remained steady, controlled, almost musical in cadence. The whispers grew. "Who is she? Is that even allowed? She's insane." Brooks, shaking, chalk dust in his hair, glanced at Danvers. I think she's breaking more than a record." Danvers didn't answer. He didn't need to, he already knew. The way Riley moved, the way she breathed, the intensity in her eyes, it wasn't a game. It was a statement. And Danvers knew the statement wasn't for them. Not for the SEALs, not for the world. It was for herself. At Rep 34, she finally paused, just a fraction of a second to adjust her grip. A subtle shift in her fingers, a tiny pivot of the wrist, but enough for Danvers to notice. That fraction of a second carried years of training, pain, and survival instincts. Then she exhaled sharply and continued. "Rep 35, muttered Brooks, breathless, shaking his head. 36, added another, more quietly, as if saying it aloud would somehow break the spell. Riley's mind drifted momentarily. The desert, the radio crackling with commands that would never reach her, the screams, the smell of gunpowder, dust, blood, the weight of her sergeant across her shoulders as she ran for cover. Her body responded to that memory, not sluggishly, not with hesitation, but with power. Every muscle tightened, refined by circumstance, honed by survival, focused entirely on the motion at hand. By Rep 38, the SEALs were speechless. Men who had once laughed were now silent, almost afraid. She moved with the ease of someone who had fought impossible odds, of someone who had already survived the worst the world could throw at them. Danvers felt a chill in the midday heat. He didn't know what drove her. He didn't need to. It was enough to watch history unfold before his eyes. And as Riley pulled herself up for Rep 39, her expression shifted subtly. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw clenched, and a flash of something dark, fierce, determined, almost haunted, flared in her gaze. The SEALs noticed. The spectators noticed. Even Danvers felt it ripple through the air like a warning. Something in her mind had awakened. Something that was not a number, not a record, not a bar. Something that belonged to the woman herself. Something dangerous. Something untamed. Something that promised the impossible. The group held its breath. Riley Hart didn't blink. She didn't falter. She didn't acknowledge the audience. She just kept pulling. And in that moment, every SEAL understood something vital, something terrifying. This wasn't a challenge anymore. This was a force. And no one in the compound had any idea what came next. The compound had grown quiet. Not the polite, respectful quiet of a crowd watching a formal demonstration, but the taut, electric silence of disbelief. By the time Riley Hart reached Rep 42, the SEALs had stopped talking altogether. They hovered near the base of the pull-up tower, arms crossed, jaws tight, eyes locked on the woman who had just rewritten everything they thought they knew about strength, discipline, and sheer willpower. Her arms were a symphony of controlled violence. Muscles tightened, relaxed, contracted again. Veins ran like delicate rivers beneath skin bronzed by the sun, her forearms flexing in perfect synchrony with her back and shoulders. Every movement spoke of thousands of hours of training, countless scars they could not see, and battles that existed only in memory and pain. Danvers's gaze sharpened. He had seen elite soldiers before, SEALs who moved like shadows, rangers who struck like lightning. But Riley, she wasn't just fast or strong or precise. She was untouchable, an entire war fought in a single body. The previous record, 27 pull-ups, was long forgotten. The bar didn't just feel taller. It felt impossible, like gravity itself had doubled its weight, and yet she moved against it with effortless authority. 36, 37, murmured Brooks, voice trembling. He didn't dare speak louder, afraid he might break some sacred spell. Rep 38. Rep 39. Her breathing remained quiet, measured. Not shallow, not panicked, but calm, surgical. Every exhale pushed blood through muscles that were screaming with effort, and yet she didn't waver. She didn't falter. Danvers stepped closer, his instincts screaming at him. This wasn't just a physical challenge. Something deeper drove her. She had faced death before, and survived. Now, standing beneath the blazing sun, gripping a steel bar as if the world itself depended on it, she was proving that survival wasn't the limit. It was just the beginning. By Rep 40, sweat had begun to streak down her temples, falling into her eyes. She didn't flinch, didn't wipe it away. It was irrelevant. The bar was all that mattered. The rhythm of her pull-ups was a heartbeat, steady, unbroken, unstoppable. Her mind wandered briefly, an involuntary drift to the past. The desert, Afghanistan, dust curling around her boots as she sprinted over jagged rocks, gunfire punctuating the air. Her sergeant pinned down behind a crumbling wall, cries of pain carried away by the wind. The radio crackled. Orders, commands, warnings. None of them mattered. She had gone anyway. She had faced the impossible alone, dragging her sergeant half a mile across uneven ridges, dodging gunfire that tore at the earth around her, surviving because there was no other choice. Her body responded to the memory as if it were happening again. A surge of strength, precise and terrifying, coursed through her. It was instinct, survival, relentless discipline born of life-or-death necessity. The SEALs didn't understand. They didn't see the memory, only the result. An unbroken rhythm, a machine-like efficiency that made every pull-up look easy. By Rep 42, Riley had surpassed every known limit on that bar. 27, child's play, 30, yesterday's news, 42, she had eclipsed all expectations and then some. A crowd had begun to gather, trainees from neighboring exercises, instructors, staff members, drawn like moths to an uncontainable flame. Whispers spread through the group, low, incredulous. Is she human? She has to be, right? No one survives like that. Danvers felt a chill despite the sun's heat. He didn't know what frightened him more, the strength, the discipline, or the absolute calm in her eyes. Rep 43, muttered Brooks. He had stopped counting after 35, lost in disbelief. Riley's focus sharpened. A small, subtle shift in her breathing, micro-adjustments of her hands on the bar, a millimeter tilt in her shoulders, every movement precise, premeditated, lethal in its efficiency. Her eyes narrowed, not with struggle, not with strain, but with a flash of memory, a spark of fire from a past she could never erase. Danvers noticed it first, a flicker of shadow in her gaze, not fear, not doubt, something darker, something hard-earned, something born of survival against odds that should have ended her. The SEALs leaned in instinctively. They had trained for years to read subtle cues, micro-expressions that betrayed fatigue, pain, or hesitation. But Riley, her face was a mask, controlled, almost bored, but the eyes told another story. A story of battles that had left scars deeper than any battlefield could leave on the skin. By Rep 45, her muscles trembled slightly, a tiny imperfection, the kind only someone who had pushed beyond limits could display. But she didn't falter. She didn't stop. Her core tightened. Grip adjusted. Rhythm resumed. Danvers knew the truth. This was no longer about breaking a record. This was a ritual of proof, a test against herself, a reaffirmation that she could still survive, still endure, still conquer what others deemed impossible. The bar was no longer an obstacle. It was a metaphor. The crowd was silent, mesmerized. Not one voice dared disturb the tension that hung in the air like smoke over a battlefield. Every SEAL had gone still, watching history unfold. Rep 46. A bead of sweat slid down her cheek, catching the sunlight, but she didn't notice. Her mind was elsewhere, half in the compound, half in a distant valley, a world of dust, fire, and screams. Rep 47. Her arms burned, her grip ached, her core quivered. The bar seemed heavier, Yet she pulled herself up again, not for the record, not for pride, not for anyone else. For herself. For the promise she had made long ago. The promise that she would never quit, no matter what. That she would finish what she started, even when the odds were impossibly stacked against her. Rep 48. And then, for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. Not from the bar, not from exhaustion, not from the eyes of the SEALs. From memory. The valley, the burning ridge, the wounded sergeant screaming, the hopelessness that had once threatened to swallow her whole. She trembled, not physically but inside, a ghost of fear from years ago resurfacing. Danvers saw it and stepped forward instinctively. "You can stop, Hart," he said quietly. "You've already shattered the record. No one would blame you." Riley's eyes didn't leave the bar. Her lips didn't move. She exhaled slowly, measured, almost as if she was breathing fire through steel and bone. "I'm not done," she whispered. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't bravado. It was truth. And the SEALs, all of them, understood it immediately. Whatever Riley Hart had faced in her past, whatever she had endured, it had made her unrelenting, unstoppable, and utterly untouchable. And as she pulled herself for Rep 49, her expression sharpened with a new intensity, a mixture of calm, fury, and memory that sent shivers down the spines of every man watching. Danvers felt a chill in the heat of the California sun. She wasn't chasing a number anymore. She wasn't competing with anyone. She was running against her own past. And what she would do next. No one in the SEAL compound was prepared to see. By Rep 50, the air around the pull-up tower had transformed. The laughter, the jokes, the casual bravado, all had evaporated, leaving only a charged silence. Every SEAL in the compound stood frozen, eyes glued to Riley Hart, whose body had become a testament to unbroken willpower. But while her arms pumped and her core tightened with flawless rhythm, her mind had drifted elsewhere, to a place no one here could reach. The desert, Afghanistan, a sharp wind that cut like razors across jagged ridges, dust-stinging eyes mingling with sweat, blood, and the acrid scent of gunfire. The radio crackled overhead. "Ranger Hart, you're on your own. Team is pinned down. Do not engage." She had ignored the command. It had been instinct. It had been survival. It had been duty. Her sergeant lay injured, moaning softly as insurgents moved in like shadows across the broken terrain. Time had slowed. Every step, every motion, every heartbeat mattered. One wrong move and the mission and her life would end. Riley's hands had gripped the edge of a wall, pulling herself over jagged rocks while bullets tore into the dirt around her. She dragged her sergeant across uneven ground, the weight almost unbearable but necessary. Pain and fear had been irrelevant. Only action mattered. And now, hanging from the pull-up bar, that memory played like a film, fast-forwarding, then rewinding. The adrenaline, fear, and determination coursing through her veins once again. Her arms trembled, but not from fatigue. Not from the SEALs watching. Not from the record. This was deeper. Her grip tightened as if she were clutching the weight of her sergeant again, pulling him to safety. Her legs locked, her core braced, and she drew in a slow, controlled breath. The same breath she had drawn before charging over enemy lines, before dragging a comrade to cover, before she had learned that pain could be ignored but failure could not. The SEALs saw the trembling. They thought it was exhaustion. Danvers knew better. He had seen it in combat veterans. The moment their minds slipped into memory, the thin line between now and then blurring. It was a dangerous place. A place where experience sharpened reflexes but could also betray the body. By Rep 51, Riley's movements began to show subtle signs of strain. Her fingers adjusted minutely, palms slick with chalk and sweat. Her shoulders quivered. A bead of blood, tiny, almost invisible, formed where her knuckles rubbed the steel bar raw. And yet she continued. The flashback intensified. She remembered the ridge, the burning orange sky, the wails of men trapped under enemy fire. The insurgents' shadows moved like waves, relentless and faceless. One of them had charged her, knife raised. She had sidestepped, countered, and neutralized him in a single motion she didn't even consciously remember. She had survived because there was no other choice. And now, hanging here with the sun pounding down on her back, the pull-up bar felt like that ridge. The bar wasn't just steel. It was the edge of survival, the last lifeline between what she had been and what she still needed to prove. The SEALs could only watch, hearts pounding. They whispered half to themselves, half in disbelief. Does she even know how strong she is? She's insane. Is this even real? Brooks' voice shook. I don't think she's human. Danvers didn't respond. He didn't move. His eyes narrowed. He studied her face, the flicker in her eyes, the tight line of her jaw, the way her body moved with unrelenting purpose. Rep 52. The bar rattled under her grip. Her fingers burned. Her elbows screamed. Her core quivered with the force of holding herself aloft while the world pressed down on her. She saw the moment again, clear as day. The sergeant screaming, pinned by a landslide of rocks. She had called out commands to her team that never came. She had prayed silently. She had cursed aloud. She had acted alone. And she had survived. That memory, the weight, the pain, the fear, was still alive inside her. Every rep she completed now wasn't for the record. It wasn't for the SEALs. It was for herself. To prove she could still endure. To prove she could still finish what she started. The SEALs didn't understand. They couldn't. They only saw a woman performing the impossible, pull-up after pull-up, flawless and relentless. But Danvers sensed it. He felt it. He had seen this type of survivor before. Someone who had stared death in the face and walked away, someone whose mind had hardened into a weapon. By Rep 53, the pull-up tower seemed to fade around her. The world contracted until it was only the bar, the sky, and the ghost of that valley. Her arms burned. Her palms ached. Her core screamed. Her lungs pulled at every breath like she had just run miles uphill under heavy fire. And still she continued. The flashback wasn't just memory. It was fuel. Pain and fear became motivation. Adversity became power. And every rep was a replay of triumph against impossible odds. Around the base of the tower, SEALs whispered to each other in awe. Some leaned forward, trying to catch every subtle movement, every fraction of detail. Others leaned back, afraid to witness it too closely. Does she even feel exhaustion? Muttered one. Danvers didn't answer. He only observed. Riley's fingers had begun to blister, the skin raw from friction, but she didn't flinch. She remembered the rock she had clutched in Nangarhar, the shrapnel cutting into her palm, the blood coating her skin. Pain, she realized, was irrelevant. Survival demanded more than comfort. It demanded persistence. Rep 54. The memory of dragging her sergeant through fire and dust gave her a surge of strength. Her arms pulled again, higher, smoother, almost elegantly despite the agony coursing through them. Danvers's heart pounded. He felt something dangerous building, a mix of awe and fear. Because Riley Hart was no longer just breaking records. She was transcending them, pushing herself into a realm few human beings had ever touched. Rep 55. A slight tremor in her elbows, a subtle quiver in her forearms, sweat dripping into her eyes, stinging like fire, pain screaming in every fiber. And still she hung. The SEALs watched in near silence, realizing that the myth, the rumor, the story of Hart in Afghanistan might not have been exaggeration. This woman had faced the unthinkable, and she was still here. Alive, unbroken, unrelenting. Danvers noticed a change in her gaze. For the first time, it wasn't only determination. It was something else. A spark of something dangerous, a flicker of memory, a hint of storm beneath calm waters. She was pushing beyond strength, beyond stamina, beyond what anyone in that compound had ever imagined. And as she pulled herself for Rep 56, Danvers understood that whatever happened next, whatever final feat she attempted, it would leave everyone forever changed. The bar wasn't just a record anymore. It was a witness to a legacy forged in fire, blood, and unshakable will. The SEALs held their breath, because history wasn't just being made. It was unfolding, rep by impossible, awe-inspiring rep. And no one could guess where it would end. The pull-up bar seemed to hum beneath Riley Hart's hands, vibrating with every fiber of her effort. The SEALs below had stopped counting. They only watched, frozen in disbelief, as the Ranger's body moved like a pendulum of precision and sheer willpower. By Rep 57, a subtle tremor began to ripple through her arms. It was almost imperceptible at first, a quiver in her biceps, a twitch in her forearms, but Danvers noticed it immediately. This wasn't weakness. Not exactly. It was fatigue meeting memory, the kind of physical breakdown only a soldier who had survived impossible circumstances could feel and push through. Brooks, standing close to the tower, whispered under his breath, "She's gonna." Before he could finish, Riley's hand slipped slightly, chalk dust flying into the air like smoke from a fire. The SEALs collectively held their breath. Her elbows wobbled, her shoulders jerked, her body swayed for the first time since she had begun. Rep 57 hung in the air, suspended in perfect, impossible tension. Danvers stepped closer, instinct screaming, "Hart, you can stop." She didn't respond. Her eyes were distant, fixed somewhere beyond the compound, beyond the bar, beyond the sun. The flashback hit her like a tidal wave. She was back in Afghanistan. Dust choked her lungs. Muzzle flashes lit the ridges. Explosions rattled the ground beneath her feet. She carried her sergeant across uneven terrain, dragging him, lifting him over debris, moving so fast that time itself seemed to warp around her. The memory carried the pain, the fear, the exhaustion, all the emotions she had suppressed for years. And now, as she clung to the bar, that weight returned. Every fiber of her being screamed to give up. Every rational thought demanded she stop. Her arms shook violently. Her fingers grazed the edge of a grip too far for a moment. The SEALs gasped. Some instinctively reached out, as if their hands could somehow steady her. Rep 57 wavered. Her chin hovered below the bar for the first time without crossing it. Her body trembled, the rhythm broken. Danvers' eyes narrowed. He recognized the moment. She was at the edge, not of the pull-up, but of everything she had endured. The wall between her past and present had converged, and the weight of it threatened to pull her under. Brooks whispered, trembling, she's gonna fall." A bead of sweat ran into Riley's eye. Her fingers slid an agonizing millimeter along the bar. Her core screamed. Her forearms ached as if every tendon had been stretched beyond repair. Pain coursed from her shoulders down to her wrists. The crowd was silent. Every person around the compound, trainers, trainees, staff, held their breath. Even the wind seemed to still, as if afraid to disturb the moment. For a heartbeat it seemed inevitable. She would fail. She would slip. She would drop, and the record, her control, her proof, her statement, would shatter with her. Riley's eyes flickered, not with fear, not with hesitation, with memory. The valley, the ridge, her sergeant pinned beneath rocks. She had been alone then. She had survived because there had been no one to rely on, no one to catch her, no one to tell her it was okay to stop. And she had carried him anyway. Now the pull-up bar was no different. The challenge wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, existential. Her arms quivered again, her grip loosened slightly, and in that instant the world slowed for the SEALs. They could see the battle unfolding inside her. Her mind wrestled with exhaustion, with memory, with the raw human instinct to surrender. Danvers stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "You can stop, Hart. You've already broken the record." Riley didn't respond, not yet. Her eyes narrowed, gaze hardening. Her body quivered, trembling on the brink of collapse, but something deep inside stirred, a memory not just of survival but of promise. She remembered the vow she had made in the valley, the one whispered through dust and blood and gunfire. If I make it out, I will never quit anything again. Her core braced. Her fingers gripped the bar like steel. Her legs locked tight. Pain and exhaustion surged through every muscle, screaming for surrender. And then she exhaled. A deep, controlled exhale that seemed to burn the memory into the present. Rep 57 became 58. Her form steadied, minuscule adjustments keeping her shoulders from collapsing. The tremor slowed, then vanished, as she drew on something deeper than physical strength. Danvers watched, astonished. The SEALs were stunned into silence. Riley's body was trembling, yes, but now it was purposeful. Every micro-movement was a battle, yes, but one she was winning. Rep 59. Her chin barely cleared the bar. Sweat streaked her face. Her palms blistered. Her arms shook under the strain of holding her entire being against gravity. Around the base of the tower, some SEALs began whispering. She's still going. Impossible. Unreal. Riley's eyes flickered again. Memory, determination, instinct, and the faintest hint of pain that she refused to acknowledge. Rep 60. Her body was screaming. Pain seared through her shoulders, elbows, and forearms. Her fingers threatened to slip, but she held on. Danvers's breath caught. He knew the truth. She wasn't doing this for a record anymore. She was doing this for herself, for the promise she had made to never give up. The SEALs understood instinctively, and for the first time the laughter, the pride, the joking competitiveness, they felt irrelevant. Riley Hart was beyond all that. She was alone at the peak of human endurance, and the edge she hovered on was a reminder that even the strongest could falter. For the first time, doubt crossed her face. Not fear, not hesitation, but a flash of raw human vulnerability. Danvers stepped closer. "Hart," he said softly, "you don't have to." Her eyes flicked to him, then back at the bar. She didn't answer. Then with a subtle exhale, she gritted her teeth. The trembling stopped. The near fall was over. And in that instant, the world seemed to pause. The SEALs, the crowd, even the sun itself felt it. A force, alive and untouchable, had not fallen. Riley Hart had faced the brink. She had wavered, and yet she had refused to surrender. And as she prepared to pull herself for Rep 61, the SEALs realized something chilling. This was far from over. She hadn't just broken the record. She had proved something far greater. That no matter how close to collapse, no matter how heavy the weight of the past, no matter how impossible the odds, she would rise. And the question on every SEAL's mind as Riley braced for the next rep was simple and terrifying. How far could she go? The pull-up bar groaned under Riley Hart's weight, a steel note of defiance echoing across the compound. Sweat streamed down her temples, soaking the fabric of her sleeves, dripping from her chin in tiny, hot rivulets. But she didn't flinch. She didn't pause. She didn't even breathe loudly, except for the slow, deliberate rhythm that marked her focus like a war drum. Rep 61. Her arms trembled slightly but held. Her core screamed in protest, every fiber quivering under relentless strain. Yet she drew strength from somewhere beyond exhaustion. Something older, deeper, and far more powerful than muscle. She drew it from every impossible moment she had survived. The SEALs at the base of the tower had stopped whispering. Their eyes were glued to her like moths to a flame, hearts pounding in synchrony with every controlled movement. They had trained their entire lives to push limits, to endure pain, to conquer obstacles. But this was something else entirely. Brooks, chalk dust still clinging to his fingers, muttered under his breath almost to himself, She's transcending human limits." Danvers didn't speak. He simply watched, awe and apprehension warring in his chest. He recognized the pattern, those subtle micro-adjustments, the way her fingers curled around the steel, the almost imperceptible tilt of her shoulders. Every move told a story of survival, of instinct, of unyielding discipline. Riley's mind drifted briefly, not to the tower, not to the record, but to the valley where it all began. Afghanistan. Dust choking the air, heat blistering the skin, gunfire slicing through the morning haze. Her sergeant pinned beneath debris, screaming for help. Enemy shadows moving like predators across jagged rocks. And yet she had survived. Alone against impossible odds. That memory, vivid and raw, surged through her veins like molten fire. Her fingers gripped tighter, her legs locked harder. Every muscle responded with precise mechanical efficiency. Rep 62. The crowd surrounding the base of the tower began to stir. Trainers, staff, and other operators who had initially dismissed her as just another ranger now whispered urgently, eyes wide with disbelief. "She's still going," one said, voice tight. "Not human," muttered another. "She's unstoppable," whispered someone else. Riley didn't hear them. She didn't need to. Her world had narrowed to a single point, the bar, her body, and the echo of the past driving every motion. Rep 63. Her arms trembled. Sweat blurred her vision. Her core burned like fire. Her forearms screamed with the friction of raw skin against steel. Every nerve in her body screamed for relief, for surrender, for the release of gravity's relentless pull. And yet she kept going. Danvers finally moved, stepping closer, his voice calm but edged with urgency. "Hart, you don't have to." She cut him off with a subtle shake of her head. Not a refusal, not defiance, something else, something innate. "I'm not done," she whispered. The words carried weight, not for the SEALs, not for the crowd, for herself. Because the bar, the record, the compound, they were secondary. The real challenge had always been internal. The memory of survival, the grit forged in moments where death was the only alternative. Rep 64. Around the base of the tower, a shift began. Some SEALs who had initially watched in stunned silence now began cheering quietly, almost involuntarily. A nod here, a whisper there. Encouragement born of awe, not arrogance, not competition, respect. Brooks broke the quiet first. "Come on, Sergeant, you've got this." The crowd followed, a ripple of voices, tentative at first, then growing louder. "She's incredible. Keep going, Hart. You've got this." The sound seemed to bolster her. She didn't smile. She didn't break focus. But somewhere deep inside, the energy of their voices intersected with the fire of memory, forging a new surge of strength. Rep 65. Her arms burned, her fingers blistered, her core trembled, her grip was raw, every instinct screamed for relief. And yet she was stronger than exhaustion. Danvers watched, stunned. The SEALs whispered among themselves. "She's feeding off the energy now. She's thriving under pressure. Look at her form, it's perfect, even with that tremor." Riley's eyes flickered with intensity. Not fear, not strain, something older, something dangerous. Rep 66. Her grip adjusted minutely. Her shoulders shifted fractionally. Every micro-movement was intentional, lethal, unstoppable. The flashback returned, not to the bar, not to the record, but to the edge of that Afghan ridge where she had faced the impossible alone. Dust in her lungs, blood on her hands, heat on her back, bullets tearing through the earth. She had survived. And now, she was proving to herself that she could still survive every impossible moment that life threw in her path. Rep 67. The crowd erupted, not in shock, not in disbelief, but in recognition, respect, awe. They had witnessed something beyond skill, beyond strength, beyond human limits. Brooks' voice cracked as he shouted, "You're amazing, keep going, Hart." Danvers stepped back, letting the moment unfold. He had realized something profound. Riley wasn't doing this for glory. She wasn't doing this for records. She wasn't doing this for them. She was doing this because she had to prove to herself that she could. Rep 68. Her muscles screamed. Her fingers were raw, sweat and blood mixed, streaking down her forearms. Her shoulders quivered with the weight of her own body. The bar felt heavier than ever. Every fiber of her being fought gravity, exhaustion, and the pull of years of suppressed memory. And still she rose. Rep 69. By now the entire compound had gathered. SEALs, staff, trainees, all watching as Riley Hart pushed past limits no one thought possible. Her arms trembled visibly, her core screamed, her grip burned. And yet she moved with precision, discipline, and unrelenting purpose. Danvers realized the truth. This was no longer about a record. It was about legacy, survival, and proving the impossible is possible. Rep 70. The bar groaned under her grip, her form trembling but unwavering. Sweat dripped into her eyes, blinding her momentarily. She blinked it away. She exhaled slowly. She gritted her teeth. The crowd shouted, encouragement now merging into a single wave of energy. Riley's eyes narrowed. Pain, memory, and determination collided inside her, igniting a surge that refused to be denied. Rep 71. And in that moment, the impossible became inevitable. Because Riley Hart, Ranger, survivor, legend in the making, was just getting started, the compound was electric. Every SEAL, every trainee, every observer had gathered around the pull-up tower, drawn to the impossible spectacle of Riley Hart, who now hovered on the edge of human endurance. Sweat dripped from her temples, arms quivering, core taut with the strain of countless repetitions. The bar groaned under her grip, a sharp metallic protest that seemed to echo across the compound like a battle cry. Rep 72. Riley's fingers blistered, raw skin peeling ever so slightly against the steel. Her elbows trembled. Her shoulders shook violently, muscles screaming in protest. Every instinct told her to stop, to drop, to surrender. But instinct wasn't enough. She had faced far worse. She had survived what should have killed her. She refused to yield now. Danvers stood at the base of the tower, silent, watching, his mind racing. He had trained elite soldiers for decades, pushed men and women to their absolute limits, and yet he had never seen anything like this. Riley Hart wasn't just strong. She was relentless. She was unbreakable, and she was alive with memory, fire, and pure defiance. Brooks, chalk dust still clinging to his trembling hands, whispered, "She's beyond human. She's something else." Around the compound, the crowd's whispers had turned into cheers, fragmented at first, but now building into a roaring wave of encouragement. "You've got this, Hart. Keep going, don't stop. Unstoppable." Riley didn't respond to their voices. She didn't need to. She was listening to a voice older, deeper, stronger than any cheer. A voice forged in dust, fire, and blood. A voice that had carried her through the worst of humanity. Rep 73. The memory surged again. The Afghan ridge, the burning sky, the cries of men pinned beneath debris, the muzzle flashes tearing across the horizon. She had carried the weight of life and death before. Now she carried the weight of history, of expectation, of proof that the impossible could be conquered. Her arms trembled violently, her core shook, her fingers threatened to slip. Her breath came in ragged gasps, shallow yet deliberate. Every fiber of her being screamed to stop. And yet she pulled herself higher. Rep 74. Danvers' heart raced. He recognized the exact moment when fatigue crossed into the realm of danger. Every muscle, tendon, and nerve in Riley's body was pushed to its breaking point. The SEALs whispered urgently among themselves. "She's close to the limit. She can't keep this up. She's going to collapse if she..." But Riley's gaze, fierce and unwavering, cut through the whispers. She wasn't thinking about the limit. She wasn't thinking about collapse. She was thinking about proof. Proof of survival, proof of endurance, proof of herself. Rep 75. The bar seemed impossibly heavy now. Her grip was raw, palms bleeding slightly. Her arms shook violently, but each repetition carried her higher, smoother, stronger. She had learned to ignore pain long ago. Pain was a signal, not a command. She had survived worse. Rep 76. A tiny quiver rippled through her body, a subtle instability, but she corrected it instantly. Micro-adjustments so precise only someone trained by decades of survival under fire could execute. Danvers stepped closer instinctively, his voice calm but commanding. "Hart, that's far enough. You don't have to." She cut him off with a subtle tilt of her head, eyes narrowing, lips pressed in determination. Not a word, not a sound, just pure, unyielding will. Rep 77. The crowd erupted, voices merging into a deafening wave of admiration and disbelief. The SEALs were standing on the edge of the crowd, whispering to each other, unable to comprehend the level of control Riley displayed. Brooks, barely able to breathe, shouted over the chaos, "This is unreal, she's rewriting limits." Riley's focus narrowed even further. She wasn't counting reps anymore. The bar wasn't steel, it was history. Every pull-up wasn't just emotion, it was a statement, a legacy, a declaration that she would never surrender, never falter, never yield. Rep 78. Her muscles screamed. Her arms were shaking violently. Her fingers burned. Sweat streamed down her face, stinging her eyes, but she didn't flinch. Her body had reached the threshold of collapse, yet she moved with precision, grace, and unrelenting power. Rep 79. The crowd was on its feet, shouting, gasping, some even crying in awe. Trainers whispered in disbelief. SEALs clutched their heads, muttering, "I've never seen anything like this in my life." Danvers felt a chill run down his spine. He recognized the moment. This was the point where most would fail, where even the strongest would surrender to gravity, fatigue, and sheer exhaustion. And yet Riley hung there, unwavering, almost serene in the eye of the storm. Rep 80. Her arms quivered so violently that it seemed impossible she could continue. Every nerve, tendon, and muscle fiber screamed for release. Her core shook, and her body threatened to collapse. And then, with an almost imperceptible adjustment, she corrected herself, gripping tighter, bracing harder, and pulling through. The flashback hit again, the Afghan ridge, the sand, the blood, the screams. She had survived there. She had survived every impossible moment that life had thrown at her. And she knew, deep in her bones, that she would survive this too. Rep 81. Her body screamed, her fingers raw, arms trembling uncontrollably, and yet she ascended again. The bar groaned under her weight, but she didn't falter. She had transcended limits. She had become unstoppable. Rep 82. The crowd was roaring now. Shouts of encouragement and disbelief blended into one deafening wave. The SEALs were on their knees, leaning forward, mouths open, witnessing something beyond skill, beyond strength, beyond human understanding. Brooks shouted hoarsely, "You've got this, Hart, keep going." Riley didn't respond. She didn't need to. She was beyond words, beyond competition, beyond expectation. She was pure force, forged by fire and unbreakable will. Rep 83. The bar trembled under her grip, her arms shook violently, her fingers bled. Her core screamed in agony, and yet she pulled herself higher. Danvers realized, with a mix of awe and fear, that Riley Hart wasn't just defying the record. She was defying every assumption about human endurance. Rep 84. Her body quivered, threatening to collapse. Sweat stung her eyes. Pain sliced through every muscle. And yet, she moved with precision and determination that seemed otherworldly. The crowd's roar reached a crescendo. Trainers, staff, and SEALs alike were shouting her name, some crying, some gasping, all watching history unfold before their eyes. Riley's eyes flickered briefly, a flash of the valley, the ridge, the impossibility she had overcome. She drew it all in, allowed it to fuel her and pushed beyond the edge. Rep 85. Her body shook violently, her arms threatened to give out. Her fingers burned raw, her core screamed. Her breath was ragged, shallow, desperate. And yet she ascended once more. The bar groaned, the compound vibrated, the air shimmered with intensity. Every eye in the crowd was fixed on her, holding its collective breath. Danvers felt it deep in his chest, the truth of what he was witnessing. Riley Hart wasn't just breaking records, she was remaking them. Rep 86. Her body was trembling on the very brink of collapse, sweat mixed with blood. Pain threatened to overpower her, and yet she held on. Because Riley Hart, Ranger survivor legend, was unstoppable. And as she braced for Rep 87, every person in the compound knew one terrifying truth. She wasn't done yet. The sun had reached its peak, burning down on the compound, yet Riley Hart hung suspended as if time itself had slowed. Rep 87 had passed. 88 was within reach. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest, every tendon and nerve quivering on the edge of collapse. Sweat poured into her eyes, stung her raw fingers, soaked her clothing. Every fiber of her being begged her to surrender. And yet she didn't. She was no longer just performing pull-ups. She was defying every expectation of human limitation. Every SEAL, every trainee, every observer around the base of the tower could feel it, something primal, electric, undeniable. They were witnessing a force of nature, a survivor, a legend in motion. Danvers, standing at the base, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had trained elite soldiers for decades. He had seen heroes forged in fire, men and women who had endured war, pain, and heartbreak. But nothing compared to this. Brooks could barely speak. Chalk dust clung to his trembling hands. She's gonna. His words died in awe. Riley's gaze, locked forward, narrowed. Every memory of her past, the Afghan ridge, the burning sky, the cries of her pinned sergeant, fueled her. That impossible, terrifying survival was her anchor, her fire, her power. Rep 88. The bar groaned under her weight. Her hands blistered, raw skin beginning to tear. Her arms shook violently, forearms quivering as if every second were a battle. Her core screamed. Her shoulders threatened to buckle, and yet she rose. The compound erupted in a chorus of gasps, cheers, and cries. SEALs shouted her name. Trainers leapt to their feet. Trainees covered their mouths in disbelief. The sheer force of her determination radiated like a shockwave through every person watching. Rep 89. Her mind narrowed to a single point. Not the bar, not the record, not the crowd. Only the will to finish what she had started. She drew in a ragged breath, letting every exhale become a weapon, every movement precise, every fiber of her being focused on one ultimate goal: proof. Danvers whispered almost to himself, "She's transcended it all." The flashback came one last time, not a haunting memory but a weapon of strength. She saw the ridge, the explosions, the dust, the fear, and, most importantly, herself. She had survived it all. Every impossible moment, every ounce of pain, every shadow that had threatened to claim her, she had conquered. Rep 90. Her body screamed in rebellion. Her arms threatened to give out. Her grip faltered, and for a split second the world seemed suspended, balanced on the edge of triumph and disaster. Every SEAL in the compound froze. Every heart seemed to stop. Then, with a controlled exhale and a surge of pure instinct, Riley pulled herself higher than ever before. Her chin cleared the bar. Her shoulders locked. Her body, trembling and raw, moved with flawless precision. Time slowed. The bar had been conquered. The record had been shattered. And Riley Hart, drenched in sweat, blood, and the fire of her own will, hung for a heartbeat in absolute, impossible victory. The compound erupted. The SEALs, trainers, staff, and onlookers all shouted, cheered, cried, and clapped. Some fell to their knees, some clapped until their hands were raw. The impossible had been done. Danvers felt tears prick his eyes, not of pity, not of doubt, but of awe. This was more than strength, more than endurance, more than survival. This was legend. Brooks, his voice cracking with emotion, shouted, "You did it! You actually did it! You're unstoppable," Danvers finished for him, his voice trembling. Riley's gaze swept over the crowd, yet her eyes were calm, not arrogant, not triumphant, steady, focused, resolute. She had done this for no one but herself. The record was meaningless compared to the truth she had proven, that she could endure, survive, and rise above every limit the world tried to place on her. Rep 91. Her hands finally slipped from the bar, letting gravity take her down, but she landed lightly, controlled, like a predator who had completed its hunt. Her chest heaved, her arms trembled, her legs shook, but she stood. Every eye followed her, every voice hushed, every whisper, cheer, and cry fell into silence. Then she spoke, voice quiet but commanding. "I'm not finished yet." The crowd froze. Even the most seasoned SEALs felt a shiver run down their spines. That wasn't bravado. That was truth. She had pushed through pain, fear, exhaustion, and memory to reach the impossible, and she would not stop. Danvers stepped forward, finally breaking his silence. "Hart, you've done the unthinkable. Every record, every expectation, you've shattered them all." She nodded slightly, eyes distant yet sharp. "It's not about records. It's about proving that limits are illusions, that survival is strength, that," she paused, chest heaving, voice catching slightly in raw emotion, "we're capable of more than we think if we refuse to quit." A silence fell over the compound, heavier than any cheer, thicker than any shout. It was respect, awe, and realization. Everyone present understood that they had witnessed something historic, something that could not be replicated. Riley Hart, Ranger survivor, Navy consultant legend, stood dripping in sweat, muscles trembling, palms raw, eyes blazing with the fire of a warrior who had faced death and won. She had shattered a record. She had rewritten history. She had shown the impossible was possible. Danvers approached, extending a hand. "On behalf of everyone here, you've earned more than a record. You've earned respect that will last a lifetime." Riley's gaze met his, steady, unwavering. She grasped his hand firmly, shaking it with a strength that belied her exhaustion. "Thank you," she said simply. Around the compound, the cheering erupted again, louder, wilder. Trainees and SEALs alike surged forward, clapping, shouting, some crying openly. But Riley barely noticed. Her mind was quiet now, calm. For the first time in hours, she let herself breathe fully, let herself feel the weight of what she had accomplished. She had climbed over the impossible. She had faced the shadow of her past, the limits of her body, and the disbelief of the world. She had endured, survived, and triumphed. And in that moment, she was not just a record holder. She was a legend alive in the flesh. Her gaze swept one last time over the compound, over the men and women who had watched her, over the bar that had been the battlefield for hours. A small, subtle smile touched her lips. The impossible was no longer impossible. And as the sun blazed over the compound, Riley Hart, pull-up tower conqueror, unstoppable, unbreakable, unforgettable, walked away, leaving history and awe in her wake.